But G2, they're taking the series 2-0. Strong start on week 1 for the reigning EULCS champions.
They definitely earned this victory. Didn't hardly break a sweat.
Very composed G2, you can see in the huddle, a little bit less excited than we've seen them before, but I think that's a good start. It's week 1 of the split, put up 2 good wins on the board. I think people expected that from them, but certainly to at least have that written in the history books now is a bit of a sigh of relief.
Yeah, I don't think you can really take anything away from their performance. It's kind of what the reigning champions should be doing. You'd have to question a little bit more if they dropped a game here. But for ROCCAT, I mean, it's a rough break. You're up against back-to-back champions, defending champions on day number 1 for you after watching a little bit of them play in their own day 1. But they've got some more winnable games coming up for them in the next couple of weeks. They've got Misfits, they've got Giants.
And it's interesting because you mentioned Misfits and Giants. They had their series yesterday where a lot of people had thought Misfits would come out and be very strong. I think looking at ROCCAT from today, Misfits and Giants from yesterday, I think the 3 are a lot closer perhaps than we had thought at first. And that makes for a very interesting set of games. And even if you're Fnatic, you've got to kind of be a little worried for how the performance of ROCCAT and Giants, at least at the start of some of these games, has been. ROCCAT game 1 came out fairly strong. I want to see that happen again and again. If they can really build that as a basis, I think ROCCAT could end up taking a series or 2 from this group stage. I don't think it's going to be from G2, though.
I think so too. Now, let's head over to the analyst desk after the decisive 2-0 from G2 over ROCCAT.
Thank you very much, guys. Indeed, the reigning champions here in Europe, unfazed by ROCCAT. And when we look at the game, they were dominating as well in game 2. And when I looked at it, I thought LeBlanc, a double TP. They're looking for the same game plan as in game 1 from the side of G2. Is that correct?
It's actually super cool because while it looks on paper very similar, it's actually more of a strategy that ROCCAT was doing in game 1 that G2 was now doing in game 2. Basically, we look at the lanes, we see HJARNAN that's auto-pushing the bot lane, we see LeBlanc versus Rice, which is a skill matchup. We immediately saw Trick visit that lane very often, so it indicates that normally, aside from the gangplank picks, which we'll get to soon, is that you want to kind of push mid with the LeBlanc, roam down to the bottom lane, and then basically start camping bot with the Shen ulti. But of course, there's a Gangplank in the game, and that kind of changed how things go.
Exactly. The big thing about Gangplank is not only should he have a comfortable matchup into the Shen, but additionally, he has a lot of opportunities to do other things. But we'll take a look at exactly how some of this unfolds.
Yeah, so basically, this is the early game where, before we get to the Gangplank part, is where this is exactly G2's game plan. They identify that the only lane they have to gank or kind of help is PERKZ. So they don't necessarily need to kill BETSY. Here we saw BETSY being zoned off some CS, some experience. We see MITHY even roaming from this perma pushing bot lane. Because again, when you push, you give your support the ability to roam. He runs mid, helps PERKZ push out, get the favorable base. So everything is kind of catered around making sure that PERKZ is getting ahead of BETSY. Once that happens, PERKZ is free to roam on the map. Usually he would go bottom for that party that we talked about, but you know, Gangplank has that global.
Once again, the global ult's all too crucial for relieving pressure, for kind of balancing out the global presence on the side of G2 with the double PP. In addition to the Shen ult, we really needed this for the side of ROCCAT for that GP to come out ahead, but we just didn't see it in the laning phase, and I think that made it that much harder for ROCCAT to do anything.
It is because of G2's adaptation, and that's what we see right here. When you can't go bot, you go top. When you play against the global, step 1 is kill the global, so this ultimate gets made in the lane, not in some other lane. And that's what PERKZ is doing here. So PERKZ was propelled forward by Trick. Bot lane was always putting pressure due to the nature of HJARNAN, and then Trick and PERKZ together moved to the top lane to shut down PHAXI, who was hoping to kind of steal some kills or kind of help his bot lane. But G2 never went bot lane, despite their composition kind of looking as if it could always do that. And that's where G2 is always so smart. They're always playing with an objective in mind. They know what they can do, where their failures might be, whereas ROCCAT was playing as if they're reacting to whatever play G2 was making.
Yeah, which is somewhere you really can't afford to be, and it feels especially bad for PHAXI because this is the new GP with the new Trinity Force. If we look back to last summer season, when Trinity Force still had critical chance, you could build, you know, multiple Infinity Edges and guarantee late game damage output. But with the new more bruiser-focused build, you take away a multiplier in his damage output, and so you don't really have this late game to fall back on.
And to round it out, I did talk to some of the members of ROCCAT before the match as well, and they also recognize recognize the fact that G2, as we say and as we see here, has a playbook that is completely worked out. So it is about growing throughout the split and not taking too much from this loss specifically.
Exactly. So, for example, for the fans out there, like ROCCAT, when they see this, they realize like this is not like super deep analysis. It's just when G2 says guys are playing around top, every single member on that team now knows, okay, bot lane has to push but play passive because jungle's not coming. They know this is a swing matchup in mid. It's all implied when PERKZ says, Trick, come help me. There's no need for communication. It's all kind of done in practice. ROCCAT, they're filling this in. What does this sentence mean exactly within the scope of the game for this player? They're learning the nuances right now.
And also very important, the player of the series in this one is PERKZ, and he is a player that we are looking at so intently to see if he can make up further in the split internationally, but if he can hold his own and prove that he is the strongest mid possibly in that group.
Yeah, I think the patience coming out from PERKZ was what really impressed me. He wasn't all about getting these early lane advantages. The team played around him, and he put all of the power that they put into him to good use very consistently. Game 1, very slow for him. He didn't get to have high impact for a long period of time, but he didn't give up kills. He didn't give up pressure. He always played his role very, very well and never felt like he needed to step into like the star carry spotlight, the over-aggressive playmaking style.
And honestly, we saw what we are used to seeing from the first split that PERKZ played in the LCS, which is all centered around PERKZ and Trick working together as a unit, getting the lane advantage for PERKZ, that then translated into kind of Trick invading. And we saw a little bit of that centered around the mid lane turret when they were kind of putting BETSY behind his turret. A couple Raptors were stolen, and the bot lane was kind of self-sufficient, like Emperor and Hybrid did back in the day. Obviously, in summer, they started playing more around ZVEN and MITHY, but it's good that there's versatility in styles for G2.
Yeah, fantastic from G2. A showcase here and a 2-0 for them. We have one more best of 3 left in this opening week of the 2017 EULCS Spring Split, and PERKZ and MITHY will be joining us for H2K versus Splice after the break.
Going to be bringing expected MAXLORE getting kicked back into tower range and taken down.
Oh, I think we've seen this one before. PHAXI, he cannot do a damn thing. PERKZ makes it look too easy. BETSY's here. Maybe he can find Trick. The damage. No, it isn't. Trick with the outplay. Now BETSY, there's no one else there. Expecting Trick. They just said, forget it. We're onto the Nexus right now, and there's nothing ROCCAT can do. G2 sweep the series.